Hello and welcome back. Today I'm watching more from Jay Foreman, hilarious comedian that talks about interesting questions that you would never think about, that come off way more fascinating than I would ever think from reading the title. So this one is about what happened to Old London Bridge. That's it, what happened to it. Very famous, songs about it. But why this video is interesting to me is that I know where the Old London Bridge is. I haven't gone to it yet, but I probably should because I do drive really close to it, to a certain area, which I'll leave it for the video to explain. I will not give any spoilers away, but it is very strange, very kind of fascinating. It's very odd to me how it ended up where it ended up. So let's let Jay Foreman guide us through this, and let's all learn something today. Sit back and enjoy.
Why is London Bridge called London Bridge?
Because it's in London.
But there are lots of bridges in London.
London Bridge was the first.
But it looks really modern.
Because it was rebuilt.
Are there lots of really interesting things about London Bridge and its history and its future that unravel into a medium-sized documentary about the River Thames and its crossings in general?
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
The River Thames is the reason London exists. Back in the year 43, the Romans chose this spot to build a bridge and found their city of Londinium, connected by road to the rest of Britain and by sea to the rest of the world.
While there's nothing physical left of the Roman bridge itself, except this apparently, it's thanks to the Roman bridge that modern London is where it is today. Here.
After the Romans left, various temporary wooden bridges came and went on this site. Probably. But it wasn't until 1209 when along came a proper permanent one made of stone, and it was a corker.
Like many bridges in medieval Europe, London Bridge was a living bridge with shops, houses, a church and tiny people made of plasticine.
The roadway was so narrow and the roofs on the buildings stuck out so far that the dark passageway felt almost like a tunnel. At its most congested, it could take an hour to get across.
Wow.
To manage congestion, the city corporation charged a toll to cross the bridge and ordered that all northbound traffic use the west side and all southbound use the east side. This may be the origin of why we now drive on the left in Britain.
I just checked and it isn't. One disappointing thing
I did watch a video on that specifically, so that was a funny little quip he added.
about the otherwise brilliant bridge was its dull name. But the reason for its dull name was quite interesting.
London Bridge was, for many centuries, the only bridge in London, which is surprising given how many thousands of people lived and worked on both sides of the river. So why was it like this for so long?
The Bridge House Estates, which ran London Bridge on behalf of the City of London Corporation, made a great deal of money from the tolls, and they were keen to keep it that way.
Yep.
In 1664, when King Charles II started making plans to build his own bridge over the Thames, the City Corporation persuaded him to forget about it with a free loan, open brackets, massive bribe, close brackets, of £100,000.
This is very random, but King Charles II. So now we have King Charles III. In a previous video, I asked specifically, because I couldn't think of it on the top of my head, when was the last King Charles? When was King Charles II compared to now King Charles III? It was something that I didn't have answered, and this kind of answered it right now. So that's good to know. Good to know. Right on.
Despite the stronghold the City Corporation strong held over the river, London got on absolutely fine with just the one bridge. Because, rather bizarrely, most Londoners never used it.
Unless you had a horse and cart full of heavy stuff, why bother using the expensive and slow London Bridge when you can simply hop on a wherry?
Wherries, pronounced wherries, were long, thin boats that could carry up to 5 people. The streets of London were so congested that a wherry was often the fastest way to get around town, whether you needed to cross the river or not. The men who rode the wherries, the watermen, were the taxi drivers of their day. They had to know the locations of all the stairs and the times when the tide came in and out. In their heyday, there were more than 10,000 of them on the river.
Oh.
And so, London remained merrily monobridged throughout the 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th and 17th century. And that was fine by everybody. Until...
In 1720, the Prime Minister Robert Walpole was in a rush to get back to Westminster for an important debate in Parliament after visiting the King. When he arrived at the Fulham Horse Ferry, the watermen were having a pint on the opposite side of the river, and they refused to come across until they'd finished their drink. Walpole missed the debate, and from that day declared war on the river.
Oh, this is all your
Did you notice the hikers back here on the top right? That's pretty funny. Imagine coming up and seeing this. I would keep walking as well. Look at him.
Walpole presented a bill to Parliament making the legislation to allow new bridges over the Thames for the first time, whether the City Corporation or the watermen liked it or not, which led to London finally getting its bridge number 2, right outside the Houses of Parliament.
Westminster Bridge opened in 1750, bringing London Bridge's centuries of monopoly to an end. Not everyone was happy about this. The City Corporation demanded compensation. So the Crown gave them compensation, which they used to get revenge on Westminster Bridge by building Blackfriars Bridge in 1769, giving Londoners a whopping 3 bridges to choose from.
Wow.
Crossing by bridge had now become a lot easier and faster and more normal than crossing by wherry.
This was bad news for the watermen, who were already having a really tough time with the closure of the theatres on the South Bank. It was the beginning of the end for the wherries.
But amazingly, they never disappeared completely. Hundreds of years later, the company of watermen and lightermen is still around today, and they still stage a protest whenever a new bridge is proposed. How's that going for you? London was growing up, and it was time to say goodbye to the old-fashioned traditional things that were holding it back. And that included London Bridge itself.
Over the centuries, London Bridge had become a medieval relic that was far too narrow for 18th century traffic. The bridge needed a makeover.
So in 1761, to make a bit more room, the Bridge House Estates decided to remove the houses and shops from the bridge.
Wow.
But it was no good. The structure was still a crumbling death trap that needed repairing every 5 minutes, as made famous in the nursery rhyme Humpty Dumpty. The whole thing had to go.
And so, in 1831, Old London Bridge was replaced by New London Bridge, designed by a father and son team, both called John Rennie.
To avoid disruption and ease construction, New London Bridge was built slightly to the left of where the Old London Bridge was.
If you look carefully at a modern map, you can clearly see how the old streets line up to show exactly where the Old London Bridge used to be. London's bridgevolution was only just beginning. In the 19th century, with London's population swelling faster than ever on both sides of the river, new bridges were being thrown across the Thames one after the other like kerplunk. Bridges for people, horses, and these new things called trains too. London just couldn't get enough of them. Bridges, 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 bridges.
Very true. Bridges everywhere. In West London, that is. East London, no. West London, so many bridges.
Bridges, bridges, bridges.
London Bridge wasn't special anymore. It blended in with all the others, getting on with its job in a no-nonsense sort of way.
After 130 years, which in London terms isn't really that long, London Bridge already found itself once again in a bit of a pickle.
By the 1960s, London had turned into a car city. To make room for all the commuters that wanted to use it, London Bridge would need to at least triple in width.
The City Corporation once again had the expensive task of building a modern bridge in place of the old one. But the trouble was, in the 20th century, it was much harder to raise the huge amount of money needed for this sort of project. And so, they made the unusual but ingenious decision to put the Two Rennies Bridge up for sale.
Brochures and
Alright.
TV ads were produced, offering a unique piece of British history to the highest bidder. The highest bidder was American oil tycoon and chainsaw manufacturer Robert P. McCulloch, who had the old London Bridge shipped across the Atlantic brick by brick and put back together in Lake Havasu City, Arizona, where it's become something of a tourist attraction.
How crazy is that? I mean, maybe you may have known where it went, but Nevada, how crazy. There it is, from London. So much history. Very funky. I mean, for anyone that's British that comes over here and sees their old London Bridge all built and huge in America and Nevada, the state of Las Vegas must be strange. Kind of cool at the same time. When I go out to Arizona, border of Nevada, pretty much Nevada and Arizona, I do drive very close to this. And honestly, I should just stop there someday. I'll just make an original video. That'd be pretty fun. That'd be pretty fun.
There's a famously not true at all urban myth that McCulloch thought he was buying the much more famous and impressive Tower Bridge and bought the wrong bridge by mistake. And that's where we get the expression, I bought the wrong bridge by mistake. Not all of London Bridge went to Arizona. These steps and this arch from the Rennies Bridge are still here and here today on the South Bank. Whilst it's great that some of the Rennies Bridge has been kept alive, its modern replacement is a structure best described as a shame.
The necessary rebuild of London Bridge in the late 60s coincided with a flash-in-the-pan fashion for brutalist functional architecture.
Wow.
New London Bridge, completed in 1973, is a wide grey concrete slab devoid of even the slightest hint of its rich history. It's impressive for the sheer amount of nothing there is to say about it.
With London Bridge getting more boring every century, the next one, coming in 2182, will likely be made entirely of beige jumpers. Yep, I think that's everything I can think of about London Bridge. But London does, of course, have many more bridges, and there are lots of interesting things to say about them, too. So if you're not busy, join me next time for another thrilling instalment of Unfinished London.
And that was that. London Bridge, Old London Bridge, or I guess New London Bridge, that's not New London Bridge, is in Nevada. Probably a couple hours away from Las Vegas. And it also is true, the New London Bridge, whatever it's called, New London Bridge, I like it. To be honest, pretty boring compared to a lot of the other bridges there. It's so magnificent. It's a shame that it looks like something that'd be in the US. And I like how they got someone here in the US, I'm assuming, to just put on his mask and shake his head around to dub over. But hey, let me know what you think about this. Let me know if you've ever been to the London Bridge here in Nevada. I'll have to stop by there. Yeah, it's just this massive desert that it's in the middle of. Very strange. And any more details you could give about the London Bridge. It looks spectacular. I love the look of this, especially compared to the new London Bridge. So thank you for joining, thank you for watching, and have a good rest of your day. I hope you learned something.